Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune, Spencer Forsythe's on the board, and we're here to talk Oklahoma athletics, and particularly the spring game, big visitors, commit, portal, all that. We've got it all coming for you right here, and then we're going to answer some chat questions down below as we get near the end of this. So Parker, how you doing? I know we've been talking quite a bit lately, but the spring game last weekend, the white beat the red 84-82, which was the defense was the white, the offense was the red. And then there was some theatrics at the end, but we'll get into all of that. What is your overall takeaways? And then I'll get into mine real quick.
Well, overall takeaways on the spring game, I try not to put too much stock into it from a team perspective, especially when you consider that Oklahoma was playing mostly with second and third string offensive linemen. That was the reason why, in general, Dillon Gabriel and Jackson Arnold had very little time to throw. That was the reason Oklahoma had very little success running the ball in a general sense all day. So a spring game is more about individual performances and takeaways more so than it is about drawing conclusions about the team as a whole. Peyton Bowen was undeniably impressive. Jackson Arnold was impressive, especially on that last drive. Kip Lewis had a big day. DJ Graham had a big day at wide receiver. Certainly a nice outing, a nice showing for several individuals across the roster. But I think the biggest storyline coming out of the spring game was, well, you got two commitments over the weekend. Isaiah Autry and Jaden Hardy both locked in their pledges with the Sooners. And then on Monday, you managed to coax a transfer across the Red River, Brandon. Brennan Thompson, former Texas Longhorn speedster, announces that he'll be transferring to the University of Oklahoma, becoming the first Texas to Oklahoma transfer since 1990. So it had been a minute. He was in town on campus for the spring game. Sooners had made a very strong impression on him even before he got to town. Jay Valai's relationship with Brennan went back to his days at Texas. Valai was actually the one that had offered Brennan originally on behalf of the Texas staff when he was there on the 40 acres. And then, of course, you throw Emmett Jones into the mix, match made in heaven, and Brennan Thompson brings speed, and more speed to the wide receiver room at Oklahoma. So all in all, a very positive weekend, Brandon, and we're counting down to what should be some more good news for the Sooners here before long as well.
Yeah, there should be. Look, you named a lot of the standouts. Obviously, Peyton Bowen was a standout. And look, before we go any further, the chat is just a buzz over his girlfriend decommitting, and I want to make this perfectly clear. As things sit right now, there is almost, I would be shocked if he was to go anywhere else, guys. I think you're just assuming that after 5 or 6 months in Norman that he's just going to walk away from everything that he's built because his girlfriend decommitted. No, one of the reasons he came to Oklahoma was his girlfriend, but that wasn't the sole reason he came to Oklahoma.
No, far from it.
Yeah, Jackson Arnold, the fact that it's close and all of it, he can get back to his family. And before anybody also gets crazy and thinks that OU and his girlfriend are like a done deal as far as the women's soccer stuff goes, I've done a lot of digging on this. I'll put it to you like this. And Parker, you can vouch for this. We knew about this, 2 o'clock this afternoon, 2 o'clock this afternoon is when we first got wind of it. And she decommitted earlier this afternoon. Like that was something that it just was something that Oklahoma was aware of, and they're working on it. Like they are working on fixing and remedying this situation because it does affect the soccer. That ironically, the women's soccer success and their personnel does affect OU's, and the biggest part is the fact that it affects 2 5-stars potentially in Bryant Westco, 2024 5-star wide receiver, top wide receiver in the 2024 class. And obviously, the number one safety in the 2023 class is already at Oklahoma and intercepted the ball during the spring game. So they're well aware. People are doing everything they can to remedy this and to fix it. So I think everybody needs to take a deep breath and not think this is like this dire situation that can't be fixed, or that the worst case scenario is going to happen and Peyton Bowen's just all of a sudden going to leave. I talked to Eli Bowen last night, and he's going to take an official to Oklahoma.
You
So
don't
in
say.
Oklahoma, yeah, one of his top schools is Oklahoma, and the top school is Oklahoma. So they've known this has been going on for a week with this soccer situation, if not a little bit longer. And so this isn't something that the Bowens and Oklahoma just now are finding out about. Like, they knew the potential of her decommitting was coming around the bend, and it just so happened to culminate today at its peak, and here we are. But it's not a done deal. If they can hurry up and get a coach, which they're now working to do, and I'm not going to sit here and say that there wasn't a lag on this per se. I think some things could have been done and handled quicker, as far as maybe communicating with some of these people, the girls in general. But that's also being remedied, because you're affecting your multi-hundred, 200, $1.5 billion industry, aka the Oklahoma football program. So when that starts to get affected, red lights start flashing and things are going to start getting fixed. So I would assume something gets remedied in the next few weeks. And maybe if that coach can start to talk to Peyton Bowen's girlfriend, things will start to get remedied. But I don't think there needs to be a lot of bedwetting over this by far. Like, that's the farthest thing OU fans need to worry about right now. I think they need to be solely focused on the team and the recruiting class of 2024, because Peyton Bowen's going to be a fixture in 2023 unless something drastic happens. Agreed, Parker?
I would certainly agree. And
So
I think the important thing to understand here is that Peyton Bowen chose Oklahoma for reasons beyond his relationship. And so if his girlfriend isn't an Oklahoma Sooner this fall, okay, it is what it is. The overwhelming likelihood is that regardless, Peyton Bowen will be a Sooner.
yes.
So that's that with regard to that topic of conversation. Captain 405 dropped $5 in the super chat and said, Brandon ditched the cardigan tonight.
I did.
Bold
That's 2
move.
weeks in a row. And you want to know what? I promise y'all, from here on out, no matter the temperature, I will cardigan this bad boy up on every live if that's what y'all want. So just like Parker ditched the lava lamp today, I'm going to blame it on him. I'm deflecting to
We're in the
lava
off
lamp.
season. You don't get the lava lamp in the off season.
There you go. All right. No, look, back to the spring game. I'll give my synopsis. Like, Peyton Bowen was really good. Speaking of him, I mean, we got to keep talking about him. That interception that he had was fantastic. It was one of those deals where you look and you go, that's why he was a 5-star. Like,
well, and I think more importantly, Brandon, it's one of those plays that you watched it unfold. And the first conscious thought I had was, wow, I haven't seen anybody in an Oklahoma uniform make a play like that in a long, long time.
Yep.
That's not the type of secondary play that Oklahoma fans have become accustomed to.
Nope. I think Billy Bowman made a couple of those plays last year where you're like, whoa, like that was a really good play. But now you've got 2 of them, potentially 3, because Reggie Pearson made some plays. I thought the secondary just looked good overall as far as the first and second stringers. I thought they looked deep. I thought they looked long, athletic. I thought it just was different than what you're used to seeing at Oklahoma. And speaking of secondary, I'm going to throw this out here right now, just so y'all know. 2 names to watch for the portal: Jamarian Burt and Damon Harmon. Just throwing that out there for everybody. So if you hear those names in the next few days, remember you heard it here first. So I'm just throwing some hints out, Parker. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There's depth, and you didn't see a lot of those guys, on Saturday, and I think there's reasons. You know what I mean? So, I mean, at one point they moved Damon Harmon to corner,
which he played a lot of in high school.
Yeah, he was a good corner, but when you have so much depth now at corner, particularly when you got Jacoby Johnson coming in, you're going to have Jaden Rowe getting healthy, Gentry Williams. I mean, you only have so many slots, right? And then maybe you want to go grab a transfer. You've got to make room, right? You've got to make room. And unfortunately, that's the world we live in college football. And I think that those two are names to watch moving forward. And there's probably going to be more, maybe one or two more thrown out there, but those are names. Those are buzz names I keep hearing. And so I'll throw that out there. As far as the rest of the spring game goes, I like Sawchuk. He didn't get a lot of good blocking as far as run blocking goes, but I think we got to see his versatility out in space. They were getting him out in space, and he made things happen. Like, he's a really good player, and he has got a chance to. I talked to somebody that knows the running back room and kind of close to the situation the other day, and they said they wouldn't be shocked if Sawchuk had 15, 16 touchdowns, total touchdowns, whether through the air or through the run game this year, and Barnes equaled 15 and 16, almost like a complete split, because they believe that Barnes is probably going to be the goal line guy and get kind of the short yardage, but they also think Sawchuk's going to be one of those guys in Levy's offense that once he hits that hole and he breaks that second level, night, because he's a low 4.3 guy, like a legit low 4.3 guy. You're talking about a dude that had the United States record in the indoor 60-meter dash. Like, he can flat fly, dude. Like, can go. So I thought he was really good. I thought defensively, Deshaun McCullough was special. Just special. I thought the sideline to sideline speed for Oklahoma with their length was way different than last year. And you could also tell that there was a comfortability difference between, and you don't want to take you can't take a whole lot of spring game, right? Like, there's not a lot you can take up, but I think those are the little things you can take. Depth, because there was a lot of injuries, a lot of people held out, and they still looked, presentable. And I think just comfortability, and then guys making plays here or there, you can kind of see they're going to be good come fall. So I thought that was intriguing. Obviously, Jackson Arnold and Dylan Gabriel were really good at quarterback. I think everybody wants to talk about Jackson Arnold in that last play, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. That last drive was almost perfection. And it wouldn't even needed the theatrics if Jaden Gibson would have ran on that fly route to begin with. Because he kind of jogged, the ball goes up in the air, then he's like, excuse my language, oh shit, I need to run. And so he takes off sprinting, trying to catch it, and he just was that close once he took off. Because if he would have been sprinting the whole time, that would have been a perfectly thrown ball. He's probably 6 right there. And then you're obviously with the theatrics going for 2 and all that type of stuff, but you wouldn't have had the theatrics of the ball he threw to Freeman, which was just an NFL pass. Like, small window, 30-yard rope in between 2 safeties. That was just special play. There's no way around it. But I think Dylan Gabriel gets kind of swept under the rug because of that play. He should have had 4 touchdowns, and I hate to bring Jaden Gibson up again because I think he's going to break through. And I don't think people should bash on him. He had a bad day. Everybody has those type of days. And yes, he dropped some passes last year as a freshman, but he also had a 95-yard touchdown pass, Parker, a reception in the spring game.
Well,
year, so
he beat a walk-on.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I don't want to just keep harping on him. But Dylan Gabriel would have had 4 touchdown passes had they not had he not dropped that ball too. So I mean, like, it was just a rough day for him, but I thought Dylan Gabriel overall looked pretty good. He missed a couple, but so did Jackson. I mean, I thought the quarterbacks looked good for going up against the defense that knew what they were doing and had seen everything that they're going to run all spring. They look halfway decent, especially when Jackson got the first team O-line for those 2 drives. He looked like the 5-star we all thought he was. I mean, I don't know. No response.
I mean, I agree with you. The 5 stars all looked like 5 stars
They
on
did.
Saturday. PJ had a bar rate.
PJ was
his
good.
contribution, maybe it didn't quite show up in the stat sheet the way that Peyton Bowens did and the way that Jackson Arnold did, but he blew up a screenplay. He was able to create some pressure pretty effectively off the edge as a pass rusher. And I think most importantly, and it's a very surface level observation, but that's a large human being. That's a guy that
He's huge, dude.
already, as an early enrollee true freshman, as somebody that should have been going to prom last weekend, he already more than looks like he belongs on a college football field. Super chat, Mongo says, who is Feinbaum's local source? Well, Feinbaum said it on his show. It's Barry Trammell. Mongo also shouted out Ricardo LeBlanc and, in the hope of passing the torch to this tradition, David Stone Sr. So there you go. Nathaniel Brown wants to know thoughts on Jackson Arnold, Brandon. He making this a competition?
No, it's okay. I don't want to say no. He's making it interesting, but there's no way Lebby is going to do that to Dylan Gabriel. Number one, Dylan Gabriel was good last year. People always forget about the 7 drop touchdown passes. They just do. Like, that just is like out there, just out in the ether, Parker. And we've talked about this a million times, how many drop touchdown passes there were last year. That they're winning. They're a 10-win team if those passes get caught. And that's the crazy part. But since they didn't get caught, they're a 6-7 team, and Dylan Gabriel is kind of just liked by some, loved by none, if that makes sense. And it's unfair. It's part of college football. It's unfair. Now, could I see a Spencer Rattler, Caleb Williams type situation come to light? I think Dylan Gabriel would have to be just bad, especially with the schedule they have, for them to pull him out. And then number 2, if he gets injured, now I'm with you all, the Jackson Arnold truthers and the people that love him. I'm with you guys on that. If Dylan Gabriel gets hurt, Jackson Arnold is never leaving the field, because now Lebby has the excuse to make that move. Your thoughts on that, Parker?
Unless Dylan Gabriel sucks in
That's
2023,
that's what, yeah.
He's not losing his job, and I don't expect him to suck.
I
expect that throughout the entirety of the 2023 season, Dylan Gabriel is going to be your starting quarterback. We've talked about this in the past. There are parallels between this situation and the one that we witnessed a couple of years ago with Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams, but it is not a direct apples to apples comparison by any means. And there is nuance here in 2023 that there was not in 2021, or rather, should I say, some nuance in 2021 that there isn't in 2023. And Dylan Gabriel is going to have to lose this job. And I don't believe he's going to do that. That's my opinion.
Yeah. No, and hey, everybody in the chat that wants to sit there and take shots at Barry Trammell and all that type of dude, like, and people are mixing him up, by the way. Trammell is genuinely one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet. So everybody has their opinion. He's been doing this for a long time. So, and he's somebody that I worked under and interned under for a little bit back in the day when I was in high school. There's not a nicer human being, he will make you think. I promise you that. Try to get in a debate with that guy and he will twist you and turn you. And he's so good at it. And that's why he's such a good writer. So I think people need to just not take everything at its face value. I don't think that's just my opinion, because I think he has his opinion, but I don't think Trammell also has the opinion of he thinks Oklahoma's just going to be terrible. I think he's just saying there's reasons to think after last season that this thing may not be moving in the way that some people feel. And that's a fair statement if you actually think about it. So there's a lot of proving wrong that Oklahoma has to get done this fall. And Parker and I think they're going to do that. But to say that it may not be moving the way that some people want it to or feel it should is a fair statement after a 6th and 7th season. I do not get why everybody's up in arms over this, Parker. I don't get it. Like, you can look back at the last season and go, okay, well, maybe that makes sense. No?
Well, look, Feinbaum made it very, very evident on his show that he's not that plugged in on the Oklahoma end. And I don't know if he has sources outside of Barry Trammell. All I do know is that from what he presented on the airwaves, it made it seem as though Barry Trammell was his only source. And so I think Feinbaum did Barry a disservice by dragging him into that by name, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, there is a nicer human being. It's Lon Kruger. There is no nicer human being than Lon Kruger.
That's fair.
But that technicality aside, yeah, it's the news cycle. Everybody will forget about this in 3 days. At least they will until Oklahoma wins 3 or 4 games to start the 2023 season, and then everybody's recirculating the clip of Feinbaum saying what he said.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, on a brighter note, Oklahoma hosted an enormous visitor list this past weekend. And we've broke down, we haven't even touched on half our interviews yet. And that's something Parker and I over the next week or so are going to be dropping on OU Insider. But I want to read a quote for everybody that hasn't listened to the podcast. I haven't put it on OU Insider yet because it's not really an insider note quote, but it is worth the quote from I got to pull it up here in my photos because I screenshot it to Parker the other day. And what'd you think, Parker? Pretty glaring quote, wouldn't you say, from a recruit?
Assuming that we're on the same page as to what you're talking about.
Jonah.
Yes,
I'm talking about Jonah. Yeah. The Jonah
exactly.
Quote.
Yes. The quote from Joseph Jonah Jonier that will go over very well, I would think.
Okay. So for you all that want to hear it, I was talking to Joseph Jonah, and he was talking about, this is the 4-star defensive lineman out of Conroe, Texas, going to continue to ascend. I actually wouldn't be shocked if he grazed 5-star by the end of his senior year. Like, he's one of those guys that I think could ascend very quickly because he's already started to. I mean, it's been a huge ascension since he's done all the camps because he's done nothing but dominate. He won the MVP at the UC report camp, basically Under Armour Houston. And then Oklahoma has been on him even before that. They've loved him before that and thought he was a big time player. So he has Oklahoma at the top of his list. He shows at the Oklahoma. He hangs out with Nigel Smith. He hangs out with David Stone. And he's already known Nigel Smith a little bit, but it was the first time he had ever talked to David Stone. And so they hung out, and they even stayed the night that Friday and Saturday night, and hung out throughout the whole weekend, went and hung out at players' houses and all types of stuff, and got to hang out with the coaches some more and all that stuff, and really got to connect. And so I asked him, I said, so what's your thoughts on you three as recruits? And his exact quote, this is the exact quote. And he says, if we go play at OU together, we would be the most dominant defensive line in college football. When you add us learning from Coach Bates, it would make us even more dominant in Norman. And I think you guys are going to like that, because he went on to say he's going to visit Oklahoma numerous times between now and even his official visit June 16th through the 18th. So to say Oklahoma's in a good spot for Joseph Jonah Ajone, number 125 player in the composite rankings, is a understatement, Parker.
Yeah, they're trending very nicely for the Conroe, Texas native. And you just throw him onto the pile with the rest of the guys that really, really like Todd Bates in the 2024 class, i.e. Nigel Smith, David Stone, Zadavian Sims. Those are kind of the big three. Jonah Ajonia makes four. And then you also got OU kind of lurking on the boundaries for Dominic McKinley and Edric Houston as well.
Mm-hmm.
And guys that I'm not really certain you get your hopes up over if you're an OU fan, but amongst their four top targets on the interior defensive line, Smith, Sims, Stone, Jonah Ajonie, Oklahoma leads for all those guys right now, Brandon.
Yeah.
And I would say to varying degrees leads by a pretty sizable margin.
Yeah. You brought up Dominic McKinley and Edric Houston. I know both those guys pretty well. Talked to both of them recently. Don't be shocked if they both take an official visit. I don't think Houston has his set up per se, but Dominic McKinley does. And he loves him some Oklahoma, I'm going to tell you that, because again, Todd Bates was first in his corner, was first to tell him he's going to be an elite defensive lineman, and it rang true. And Dominic McKinley will tell you that. He was like, yeah, he was the first person to come up to me and say, you're that dude. And that's why I'm going to recruit you, and I'm going to recruit you hard. And Bates has continued to do that. McKinley visited Oklahoma late January for the first junior day. And really, Oklahoma hit a home run there. Bates just kind of really, I guess, put him under his arms and walked him around. Venables was everywhere with him. They really tried to make him feel like that was the best place for him. So he tells me he's coming back for the Champion Barbecue on June 16th through the 18th as well for an official visit. So there's a lot to like there. LSU is going to be a problem because it's a Louisiana kid. He's from the boot. I mean, you grow up loving LSU and all that, but they don't have a defensive line coach. And as the longer that takes to, work itself out, the better it's going to be for the Oklahomas of the world with Dominic McKinley. So I think that's a name to watch. Like Parker said, the Oklahoma leads for so many of those guys, whether it's interior, exterior, defensive linemen right now. But recruiting's a crazy thing. Some of the guys they lead for today, they may not lead for after the official visits take place. And so you want to, now, granted, I saw Parker's face there. A couple of those dudes are just going to be guys at Oklahoma, like Zadavian Sims, Nigel Smith, Ajone. Like, you feel pretty good about those guys. And even a David Stone, you feel pretty good about. One area, I guess, Tennessee, even Oklahoma's worried about Tennessee a little bit there. What's your gauge on that? Like, you've talked to him more than anybody. I know the Oklahoma side of it is like, yeah, they're definitely a presence there and something to watch as far as the Vols go with Winery.
Yeah, Tennessee's in that thing, just like Oregon's in that thing and Missouri's in that thing. And official visits, I think, will go a long way towards dictating the outcome. But because of the relationships, Josh Heupel did play with Jamar Mosey back in the day at Oklahoma, right? So the relationship is strong there. Obviously, the relationships, plural, are very, very strong at Oklahoma. So to me, those have, for some time now, kind of been the two schools that have put some distance between themselves and the rest of the field. And I do think Oklahoma still has the inside track on Tennessee. Nwaneri's been to campus, 4 or 5 times. He's got a teammate there. Oklahoma offered very early on in the process. They've been very proactive and hands-on in recruiting him. They've gotten Todd Bates involved, even though Miguel Chavis is running point. Obviously, Brent Venables has been involved. Jerry Schmidt has been involved. To me, I'm not fretting over where Oklahoma stands with Will Nwaneri. And could that change once official visits roll around? Sure. I'm willing to acknowledge that. There may come a point in time at which and it may not be Tennessee, but maybe he takes an official visit to a place like Georgia and just decides, you know what? Dang, I really like it here. This is where I want to be. It's always a concern you have. And obviously, when you're dealing with 5-stars, there are other factors that can come into play too. And I don't think it's going to be as much of a labyrinth or as much of a headache with Will Nwaneri as it is with your typical 5-star. But there are certainly things of which to be cautious when you are atop the leaderboard for a 5-star prospect heading into OV season. There is much that can change, and there may be things that change down the road, but right now I still believe OU is in the best position there.
I want to clear something up here. There's like people talking, Sherman Johnson talking definitively here about Gilliam leaving if Damon Harmon leaves. I don't understand that way of thinking. Like, for me right now, it's going to be really, number one, there's only like 3 days for them to get in the portal. So unless Kelvin Gilliam really plans on getting in the portal at this point, that's not happening. And just because they played together in high school and they were friends and all that type of stuff, that doesn't mean that Gilliam just wants to leave, because Todd Bates just talked about Kelvin Gilliam, 2 weeks ago, Parker?
Yeah,
and
not that long ago.
He was like glowing about him. Yeah, he's injured, but he's like another coach. He's a coach's dream. He's going to make a difference on this team in 2023. And you don't say that, at least in my mind, and I could be wrong, but in my mind, Parker, you don't say that about somebody that is about to hit the portal.
You could.
I know he could, but
circumstances change, man. And
do you really think he's going to hit the portal?
Okay, well, since you went ahead and threw it out there, since you threw Damon Harmon's name out there, consider this. I mean, those two are very, very close.
I understand that. They came together. They played together in high school.
Kelvin Gilliam is the one that talked Damon Harmon out of quitting football when he was a sophomore in high school. So one hits the portal. It's understandable that you'd have some apprehensions about the other. Now, two guys come in and they're real close, right? It doesn't always mean that when one leaves, the other's leaving. We saw this with Caleb Williams.
That was my point. That was my point. Is like, it's not guaranteed that he's just going to go up and go. It's not, I was saying it's not definitive. Like, people were putting out like, oh, it's going to happen. Like, I can't say it's definitively going to happen. You know, I can see why it would happen, but I don't know. I totally get it. I totally get why he would leave if Damon Harmon left, but you would think Oklahoma would be playing, okay, before the Damon Harmon situation took place, they would be in the corner. And it's not a guaranteed look. It's not a guarantee that Damon Harmon hits the portal. It's not a guarantee Jamarian Burt. That's just buzz. The same buzz we heard about Jaden Davis forever. Right? And he went through the whole spring before he did it. There was a lot. He wasn't even going to make it past January. Remember that? Like, after the bowl game, he was going to be hitting the portal, and he never did. So, I mean, buzz is buzz. I just want people to understand that. Just doesn't mean it's going to happen. Let's talk Caden Durham, because that's another hot topic with people right now in the chat. Obviously, Steve Wiltfong put a crystal ball for LSU. I talked to some people today around that know Caden Durham's process and people on the Oklahoma side, and Oklahoma still feels really good about where they stand. They still think they'll be the pick at the end of the day, but they are very, very leery of the LSU Tigers right now. Like, it went from almost feeling like it was a sure thing to, well, I guess I could see him going over there, but they still think at the end of the day, it's going to be Oklahoma. So I don't know.
That's kind of my feeling on it too. It's been this way for a minute. And I want to emphasize that it's been this way for a minute. And we always have viewed Oklahoma as the leader. Plenty of others in the industry have long viewed Oklahoma as the leader, but LSU has always been right there. And go back to some of the reporting that we did on Durham in January, February, where it was, I mean, that's kind of the direction that things were headed. 2-team battle between OU and LSU. And he's been down there to Baton Rouge several times, likes it down there. He's a fan of the staff. He's a fan of the vibe overall, but he still grew up a stone's throw from the University of Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
He still grew up idolizing DeMarco Murray.
Yep.
In the end, is that the kind of kid that is likely to say no to Oklahoma? And the immediate rejoinder to that is, well, Peyton Pierce did. And that's true. And I'll concede that. But that's, in general, kind of the exception, not the rule. When there are that many signs pointing toward one school for a kid, generally you get more Peyton Bowens than Peyton Pierces.
Yeah. Well, here's Sooner Cowboys, the consummate pessimist when it comes to Oklahoma football recruiting and all that. Like it's never good. It's always bad. And he's going to want to play for all the Duncanville people and at LSU, like Colin Simmons and all that. Well, here's the retractor to that. DeCorian Moore favors Oklahoma.
Likes Oklahoma a lot right now.
So just there's that. So which one is it? Is he going to go play? And guess what? Savion Byrd is at Oklahoma. So like there are Duncanville people potentially heading to Oklahoma and or at Oklahoma that he knows. And that's not to mention, like Parker just said, the kid grew up right down the road until he was like a sophomore in Moore, Oklahoma. So the majority of that kid's friends and the majority of the people that he knows, whether OK Preps or in DFW, guess where they play? Norman, Oklahoma. So he's got a little bit more of a wide swath of friends than just Duncanville. So I tend to agree with you. It's like I said earlier, like there is some leeriness towards the LSU deal, but generally people around Norman still feel that when push comes to shove, it's Oklahoma. And he just got done visiting Oklahoma for the spring game, and everybody kind of felt like it still felt like he was leaning towards Oklahoma on that visit. So I'm supposed to be talking to Caden Durham here in the next few days, and I'm going down here in the next week to see him in Decorah and at Duncanville. So we'll have a lot more on OU Insider there, and I'll have a better feel. Parker will have a better feel after I talk to him, and we'll get a better sense of things then.
Going back earlier in the chat to a question from Tom Hill, any word on the offensive lineman, Grant Brix? That kid is a stud, and he is a stud, man. If you've watched Grant Brix's tape, if you heard me talk about Grant Brix, that's a kid. I truly believe if he's playing anywhere other than the cornfields of Iowa, he's probably a top 50 player nationally. He is an absolute killer, and it shows up on film. Now, I also think that, look, he comes from a sleepy little Iowa town of a couple hundred people. It's about 45 minutes northwest of Omaha. And he's very evidently one of those kids that never really imagined he was going to be as much of a commodity on the recruiting trail as he is these days. So the process has been somewhat overwhelming for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing a lot of unofficial visits this spring, and he's not done with his unofficial visit circuit. Off the top of my head, I know he has visited Penn State, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, Iowa State, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, of course, Kansas, Kansas State, and I'm not sure whether the Notre Dame visit has already happened or is happening, but that was on the schedule for this month as well. Notre Dame is a school that I can see making a strong impression on Brix. Obviously, it's a Catholic school. He's a Protestant kid, but religious nonetheless. And, you know, for deeply religious individuals, a school like Notre Dame is going to have a certain aura about it and going to carry a certain gravity regardless. So as of right now, he has no idea. He has absolutely no idea which 5 schools he's going to OV to. And he has no idea what the timetable for his decision is. And that's not him playing things close to the vest. He's a very transparent kid, and you get to know him. That becomes evident. He just legitimately has no idea. He's completely overwhelmed by all the attention that he's received from schools. Mom's a Michigan State alum. I know there's some fandom there. Doesn't really seem like Michigan State is the favorite there, even so. And here's what I will say about Brix in Oklahoma. I think they've got as good of a chance as anybody. I don't think they have a better chance than everybody. I don't think Oklahoma leads, but they're certainly in the peloton as far as Brix is concerned. So I would figure Oklahoma gets an official visit there, just kind of gauging his reactions to each of the schools that he's been to. I do believe OU will get an official visit. And if they do, that's where the sole mission, that's where development, both on and off the field, academic support, the student athlete experience, as opposed to just the athlete experience. That's where all of that has the potential to make Oklahoma stand out from the rest in Grant Brix's eyes and in his family's eyes. So that is one that I'll be watching closely the next couple of months, but that I do not think is anywhere close to being decided. Back to the chat here. Let's see what else y'all have. Sam Hiller says Emmett Jones, elite bald head. Emmett Jones.
They were asking who was better, Jay Valai, or who had the better bald head, Jay Valai or Emmett Jones.
Oh man,
that's where my head was at 76. By the way, because after you were talking and I read that and I was sitting there trying to picture their heads, their faces. So I don't know who does have the better bald head. That's a good question.
Yeah, Christy says, if I'm Protestant, I'm not going to a Catholic school. Hey, listen, I'm Protestant. I know plenty of Protestants, grew up around a ton of Protestants. There are Protestants that go to Catholic schools. So, so again, we'll see what happens with that whole ordeal and with Grant Brix's visit to Notre Dame. But I do think that's a school that will probably end up getting an OV from Brix, but I think OU will as well at this point. Boomer Hag, somebody tell Parker about Protestant versus Catholic. Hey, pastor's kid, trust me, you're not going to tell me anything I don't already know. There was one other one that I wanted to get to. Oh, yeah, the Emmett Jones conversation. Man, circa May 1st, I think we're going to look back on the 2-week span that has been, and I don't know if anybody will have had a stronger run over that period of time than Emmett Jones.
I mean, just to start off hiring, he may have had the best. And like, let's dive into this real quick, because when was he exactly hired? Wasn't it like in February-ish, like right after National Signing Day that he got hired? Correct. Like it was right around then, right?
It was January 10th.
Okay,
January 10th.
Okay, so it was before late National Signing. So starting at January 10th to now, we're at April 26th. Let's push forward 5 days to May 1st. Which is a big day for Parker and I, because, that's going to be fun, the old owning the site deal. But little plug there, Parker. But what he got, Andrew Anthony. Who else did he grab out of the portal?
I'm pretty sure it was just Anthony.
Okay, it was Anthony. Well, obviously recently Brennan Thompson.
Yeah. But
so he's got Anthony, Brennan Thompson.
They flirted with the Bowling Green kid and then decided.
Yeah, that's right. He got real close and they decided they didn't want him. He wanted to go to OU. He announced he was going to commit on a certain date, and it was to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma had to call him. Oh, that was so. For those that don't know, I can talk about it now. I talked to somebody that was in the middle of that recruitment, and they were literally like, we have to call him and tell him he can't commit. So like that was an awkward deal for everybody involved. But he landed at Arkansas, correct? Like that was a good landing spot for him.
Yeah, certainly.
So he ended up with Andrew Anthony, then he landed KJ Daniels, then Brennan Thompson, and now he has a chance here in the next few days to land another two if things stay, kind of trending in the direction we think they're trending for a couple of top targets, 24 and 25.
Yep.
That may be the best 4-month run of anybody that just got hired that I can remember. Maybe not the best run ever, but like generally you just got hired, especially the timing of it all. Like you get it when somebody gets hired and it's like 3 months before National Signing Day and they land like 3 5-stars or, whatever, couple 4-stars, 4 stars, and they sign a really good class at their position. That's one thing. But this dude is transfer portal 2024, 2025. Like he is crossing the gambit of everything and nailing top targets left and right. And it's essentially what he is essentially what everybody thought he would be when he got hired. The only difference is for him as a recruiter, and I said this on your radio show the other day, the logo. The logo has changed everything for Emmett Jones. He went from being a great recruiter at Kansas and Texas Tech to a freaking elite recruiter with that OU logo next to him. It makes a difference, man. Makes a huge difference.
We missed a super chat from Sammy a while back who asks, do you think JFA red shirts? I'd say no, because he needs game experience before he's thrown to the Wolves next season in the SEC. Also, shout out to all the dads of the top defensive line targets.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's going to redshirt because I think they're going to play him. I think Oklahoma's schedule lines up to where if they handle their business, they should win significantly in several of those games and allow Jackson Arnold to get some pretty good run in the third and fourth quarters. You agree with that?
I do. And
No.
if Oklahoma wins games by wide margins and they can afford to sit Dylan Gabriel down in the late stages, it's going to be Jackson Arnold that they turn to. And on the one hand, I find myself kind of conflicted because I think it's always worthwhile to redshirt a guy if you can afford it, just because you think about a situation like the one that Caleb Kelly encountered or the one that Rodney Anderson encountered or the one that CJ Colden dealt with at Wyoming, right? You never know what's going to happen later on in your collegiate career. And so anytime you can save your eligibility, it makes sense to. But then again, unless things go haywire from an injury standpoint for Jackson Arnold, there's not a chance he's going to be at Oklahoma 4 years anyway.
No.
Not a chance. So,
no.
Yeah, I do not think he redshirts, to answer your question. Here we go. Austin had a question, asked a few times. We're going to get around to it. If you had to pick, what guys are we going to land on the defensive line this cycle? Brandon, you got to pick interior, got to pick edge. Who you got?
All right. I'm going to take 5. Okay. Because I think they take 3 interior, 2 edge. I think they've gotten to the point where they're really stacked at the edge position right now. At least depth wise. Now they'll always take talent. The Venables will always take talent on defensive line, but interior I think is where they're focusing the meat of their recruiting right now. So I would go Zadavian Sims, and I think that one gets done by the middle of June, maybe the 4th week of June. I think he is a Sooner. I don't have any connections to that or anything, but sarcasm. 2, I'll David Stone, Nigel Smith, Jonah. And I want to say Williams Winery, but if they pull that 5 off, that is the most insane 5 of all time. But
yeah, that's pretty ridiculous.
It is. It's ridiculous, but it's legitimately possible. That's like we're saying that, and it is possible. That's the hard part about it. I'm going to say Winery, even though I'm not real sure on that. Who's the dude out of I'm drawing a blank here. The white kid from Northern. Oh my gosh. Help me out here, Parker.
The white kid?
Yeah, not Lindstrom.
Wyatt Gilmore.
Wyatt Gilmore. That's what I was thinking of. I think he would be the other kid. If it's not Winery, it's going to be Wyatt Gilmore at defensive end. So those would be the 6 that I think Oklahoma has the best chance for. And I think they'll land 4 or 5 of the 6 of those. How about that? I'm not guaranteeing it, but I think they land 4 of those 6. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just look at the crystal balls right now. Stone, Smith, JJA, Williams, and Winery. That's the 4 I think you start with. Throws a Davian Sims in there because I think the worm is turning on that one. It's just a matter of time. And I agree with you on Wyatt Gilmore. It's just I feel obligated to pick at least one that's different. So
Okay.
Here's what I'll say. I'll say they find a way to get Jay Sean Ross to move things along.
God, dude. That's almost like my Williams one. So it's like okay. Who do you said? You said Stone, Sims. Who else?
Stone, Sims, Smith,
Jonah,
Joseph Jonah, Jonier, Nwaneri, and
I think God.
I think people are sleeping on OU and Kellen Lindstrom though.
I know. I agree with
that.
I wanted to say him, but I thought it would just be.
Let me tell you what. At that spring game, I'm down there on the field, Brandon, and I'm taking it all in and keeping an eye on everything that's going on, not just on the field leading up to the game, but when they bring the recruits out, obviously I stay vigilant. And I don't know that there was a player at that spring game that got the VIP treatment quite like Kellen Lindstrom did. The Sooner
That's
staff
saying
was
something because of Smith, Stone, and Ajone.
Exactly. And so the staff was very, very intentional about making sure that they carved out time for Kellen Lindstrom. Miguel Chavis, Brent Venables talked to him for quite a while in person as they were standing out there warming up.
Mm-hmm.
And after the game was over, it was the same deal. Chavis was back chatting with him and his family. And so a kid from just up the road in Springfield, Missouri, certainly one to keep an eye on.
The question is did he get to go up to Venables' office while he was there? That's kind of the key, because the ones that do are the ones they're really looking for, and the ones that they kind of just have the assistants talking to are the ones that are kind of they want, but they're not pushing hard for at this point. That's kind of I've always gauged it. So do you know if he got to go into the Venables' office or not?
I do not know. No.
Okay. Somebody asked, it's kind of an interesting question. Muslim population is tight in Michigan. Is that why By Job felt at home up there? Ironically, the recruiting coordinator is, I think, Muslim at Michigan State, and that was one of the main cogs. That and the fact that at the time, Brandon Jordan was there, and he was just known for developing pass rushers, and that was kind of the key. And By just kind of wanted to leave town. I remember him talking to me a little bit in the middle of their basketball, and he just said, man, I just kind of want to spread my wings out a little bit more. I did it when I came to Oklahoma. Now I want to check out a little more. Having said that, 2 years from now, not shocked if he ends up back in Norman. I will not be shocked. Just because Mel Tucker and his staff are kind of on edge right now, and it seems like Michigan State is trying to find a reason to get out of that contract. It does. Like that it really seems that way right now. Now, I don't know if there's any validity behind that, but I've heard some inklings, and if they go 6-7 again, or 5-7, or whatever they were last year, I don't know how long he'll last, Parker. I really don't. Like, it would seem that one foot would be out the door at that point. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
and forced out the door, by the way. Not that he wants to leave, because that's a fat contract he resigned. And he built his success off the backs of a star running back and got a nice salary off of it. Is there any more questions that we need to touch here before we close this bad boy out, or how are we looking here?
Do the other Lee Summit North kids already at OU have some big pull on Will Nwaneri? And if we get Will Nwaneri, will that have major pull
That's
on
you.
Mosey, since they're all from the same high school team? Look, the only Lee Summit North kid at Oklahoma right now is Caden Green. And I mean, Caden Green said it when he was on the signing day stream with us back in December. He's not really going to badger Will Nwaneri about following him to Oklahoma. And I will say this much. I do have the crystal ball in for Will Nwaneri, and I do think OU is the destination in the end if you made me pick. But OU is far more likely to get Isaiah Mosey than they are to get Will Nwaneri. And it's been this way for a year ago. I'm pretty sure we were saying the exact same things, because that was certainly the reality up at LSN, was that if there's one of those three that's going to get away from Oklahoma, it's going to go somewhere else, it'll be Will Nwaneri, because OU was all Caden Green wanted. Seems to be all that Isaiah Mosey wants, even as he visits other schools and makes the rounds. OU is kind of where his heart has always been when you talk to people around him. And so I expect that that's where he ends up. For Will, yeah, things look good for Oklahoma right now, but that is the one amongst the three that was always the least certain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know that better than I, and it does feel kind of weird right now with him, right? Like, because he keeps taking all these visits. I think he's going to Oregon here pretty soon again, and it just feels weird. Like, he pops down to Oklahoma, then he's at Tennessee, then he's at Oregon. He's making the rounds, and everywhere he goes, everybody's like, "Oh, we feel really good about where we stand with Williams Nwaneri." And maybe it's just how he speaks to people. He's not. I've talked to him a few times. Nothing like you. You know him better than anybody. He's not one that just tells you he's not going to fill you with BS. That's not who he is.
No, not at all.
So it's kind of weird that happens everywhere he goes too. So it's just because he's such a good, nice kid, and I think he just makes you feel warm and comfort, like just talking to him. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna land that kid.
Hey, he's an agreeable kid, and I think a lot of it comes down to hopium, Brandon. You know, you get a 5-star edge on campus. You want to believe that you have a better chance with him than you probably actually do. This is a 4-team race and has been for quite some time. OU, Oregon, Missouri, Tennessee. He's had those 4 OVs set. And look, that news was making the rounds in the aftermath of the UC report camp about a week and a half ago. We reported that on OU Insider at the beginning of February, that those were the 4 schools he was going to take official visits with. And he may end up taking a 5th. Who knows? With the new NCAA rules, he may take more than 5, but it's one of those 4. That's what it's going to be. And I would be willing to bet that Missouri is not where he ends up. I'd be willing to bet that Oregon is not where he ends up. So I think there is a group of 4 that has set themselves apart from the rest. And within those 4, I think there are 2 that have set themselves apart from the rest.
Quickly, 2 questions. Kearney commitment ? Let's just say in the next 24, 48 hours, there could be some movement with a certain wide receiver. And if it doesn't happen, something seriously changed. So, to Joshua Farmer, defensive tackle from Florida State, hit the portal recently. Oklahoma has contacted him.
He's
Now,
not. No, he's not in the portal. He's
well,
not in the portal yet.
Farmer, they said he was in the portal.
Farmer is not in the portal.
Okay, Oklahoma will contact him. How about that? I've heard they have plans to get after him. So, at least that's what I've been told by somebody earlier today, that was a name to watch. So, and they were fully aware of the situation. So, I would assume NIL is going to be a problem there. That is also the buzz I've heard. That NIL will be an issue.
I have heard there is another school that has actively tampered in that situation. So again, much like Bear Alexander, even if OU does get involved, have healthy expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Oklahoma aware. They will talk with him, obviously, and I thought he's already in a portal, because when I talked to people earlier, they're like, yeah, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And I was like, okay. So I assume the conversation has already been had at that point. So I guess not. So they will when he hits the portal. But yes, as Parker said, NIL, I said NIL will be a problem. Parker put it out a little bit more bluntly. There is another school involved there that has laid the groundwork for this move, if you will. So it's very much akin to Bear Alexander, and I want to clear that Bear Alexander stuff up real quick. And Parker, you can confirm this too. People at Oklahoma were very pissed off that they weren't even in the top, because it was literally a 2-team race. And then he didn't put Oklahoma as one of the options. And the schools that he did put as an option never even talked to the kid. If that's not I don't want to say token Bear move, but it was a token Bear move. It's everything we've known about his, what would be the word I'm looking for here, Parker? His people, I guess, would be
his camp.
His camp. There it is. It's everything we've known about his camp. And that right there was a prime example. I mean, he literally talked to Oklahoma about visiting, took a visit to USC, and then announced the top schools and didn't put Oklahoma on the list, and put schools that weren't even in contact with him on the list. That was pretty funny. So, but it was a done deal anyways. Like, Oklahoma was just, they were trying to swim uphill in a very, very strong stream, if you will. I guess finally, Parker, outside of the potential 2 commits in the next week, how do you see the month of May playing out? How many commits do you think Oklahoma will have in the month of May?
I think it'll be a quiet month for the most part. I would say 1, maybe 2. That's probably about it.
And is that 1 counting the potential 1 on early next week?
Yes.
So you think that's it?
Well, okay. Well, Xavier Robinson as well. So let me rephrase.
Well, he took that down. He took his tweet down, didn't he?
Yeah. So from what I have been told in talking,
I'm going by there tomorrow at 2:00. So
it's still going to happen in May. It's just going to be somewhat. It's going to be on a later timetable than was initially the plan. So I'll say 2, maybe 3.
I'll go with 2. And if you get 2 in the month of May, that's fine, because how many do you predict happen in the month of June?
Yeah, June and July is where the avalanche happens.
How many in June? How many in July? Let's go. Throw it out there. How many they got right now? 5?
5 in the class of 2024. I'll say 6 in June, 8 in July.
So, and they could have 6 by the end of April in 2024. So that would be 12.
20 total commits by the end of July.
So you said 8 in July?
Yeah.
They had 11 in July last year, didn't they? Or 9? I can't remember.
Did. It was, I think if you count Vosick, who silented at the end of July but announced on August 1st, it was 10.
Okay. I'll say 2 in May. I'll Price is Right you, but I'll do the opposite of what you would do on Price is Right, and I'll say 7 in July or June, 7 in June, and then I'll Price is Right you again in July, just like I did in June, and say 9. So we'll split what they got last year in July. You 8, me 9. Reality, they got 10 last year in July. So that would put Oklahoma at 21 with me. That would put 20 with you. I think people want to know, obviously, right off the bat is David Stone one of those with you, and is he one of those with me? And here's why I say no, and for people not to get upset, because he wants to announce anyways the beginning of August. So no, but yes, if that makes sense. I think he announces the beginning of, that's his plan, unless he does the Peyton Bowen thing and changes his date as he goes along. Yeah. So, gosh, I hope
I'll
not. I
poke
don't want
my
to
own
cover
eyeballs out.
Me too. Do you think of those 17 that you predicted, or sorry, excuse me, 15 that you predicted between June and July, how many of those are D linemen?
5 of them are D linemen.
Oh my God. So would David Stone be the only one that hadn't announced yet, or do you expect him to change his date and make it earlier?
I don't know. Somebody's going to move their timeline up between Jonah Jonier and Stone. Because Jonah Jonier is planning on announcing August 1st, right?
Yes,
now.
he's an August 1st guy. Yeah.
One of those two, I'll say, moves it up.
Do not. He told me that. He said, when I talked to him the other day, he said, "Oh, and I'll have something here in the next 3 or 4 days on that. I got a bunch coming between a lot of guys, and so does Parker." But he said, "Oh, August 1st, but you never know. I could just one day wake up and decide I'm done." He's not one that really enjoys the recruiting process either. So, yeah, I think he could honestly, in my opinion, be a June dude. I think he could be one of those that gets on the official visit and be like, "Yeah, I'm done."
Yeah.
So, anyways, all right, that's gonna do it for this version of the OU Insider. Under the Visor YouTube Live. Somebody brought up the baby, Parker, and we do have a gender announcement this weekend. So we'll find out if it's a boy or a girl. Parker will be there shooting video and photos.
Am I allowed to drop the crystal ball?
Drop the crystal ball, dude. Do it. See what's your guess?
What's my guess?
Yeah.
I have a couple real good sources on the matter, so I'll keep it low key for now.
Fair enough. Don't do it to me, dude. Don't do it to me. I would have to go sleep in a tent the rest of my life. So, anyways, yeah. This weekend's going to be fun for myself. And then next week, obviously, Parker and I will become the owners of OU Insider. So we want to thank you guys for everything you guys have done. Because honestly, we put in work, but if that work isn't read, if there's no subscriptions, if there's none of that, Parker and I don't get the opportunity to do that, and we don't get to own the site. So we want to thank you guys for everything that you all have done. Obviously being here on the podcast and YouTube lives, but also being members of OU Insiders. So thank you guys very, very, very much. But yeah, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider YouTube Live. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, we will see you all next week, and you guys have a blessed night.